What can be said about a legendary man in our community that hasn't already been said? About his triumphs, bringing us valuable products that make our lives easier, and talk about a world class reef tank, or how early development didn't preclude him from succeeding within our industry. Join us as we deep dive into David Saxby's journey, which is about a man who found solutions, a man who was awarded the Coral Freaks Hobbyist of the Year and Lifetime Achievement Award, which was well deserved. Together, let's learn about his extraordinary achievements. You have to love reefing. Welcome, everyone, to VargasReef Chronicles. Today, I have a very good surprise for everyone watching the channel. I have the legendary David Saxby, and he was gracious enough to invite us last night to do the recording, but it got so convoluted with many people here that we had to come back the next day and do this recording. And I would have to tell you, as our audience, this big baby behind us is so damn impressive. But more impressive is the experience and the knowledge we're going to gain today by having David on our platform. So, David, thank you very much for inviting us.
And thank you very much an embarrassing welcome.
An embarrassing welcome.
Yeah, very much so.
This is how we start. And it gets into politics, but for this video, we will not discuss politics.
Well, certainly not yours.
So let's get started. David, thank you again so much for inviting us. Your tank is absolutely spectacular. And I would like you to give the audience a little intro about yourself and how you got started with this hobby of ours.
Well, I started marine keeping when I was 28, and there were a limited amount of shops that would supply anything to do with salt water, and most of the shops were living in a world of fairy tales, is the best way to describe it.
Uh-huh.
And there were products that came onto the market continuously at that time that promised so much, and they were just incapable of even supporting a bioreef, or in those days it was a soft bioreef, soft coral bioreef, because there were very few hard corals, SPSs. We couldn't keep them. There were no SPSs when I first started reef keeping. The first experience I had was I went to a shop where there were many seawater imports of invertebrates and corals, mostly soft. And I was so taken back by them that I really wanted to try and do that myself at home. I had kept tropicals for many years, and I was 28 years old, and I'd started my own business at the time.
Keeping freshwater tropicals, you said. What were you keeping at that time?
Well, I started keeping fish from the age of 8.
Oh, okay. So you started.
So I had goldfish that I were given on my 8th birthday.
Uh-huh.
And I can feel them now. I can see them now, and so excited by them. My parents promised me I could have 2 goldfish in a tank, and I was about 8, and I had a bit of weed in it, and 2 nice goldfish that I kept for quite a long time. In those days, we tend to overfeed them, and it wasn't healthy. But anyway, I went from goldfish later on to tropicals, and then just at the time when the first discus were coming in.
Oh, okay.
So they were wild-caught discus. They don't look anything like the cultivated discus you see today.
Right.
They were brown, pretty uncolourful, with stripes. And they used to suffer from a disease where they get holes in their head.
Right.
And it was incurable at the time. But I did try and keep a few, and I had managed to keep them. The water had to be very soft for them.
Mm-hmm. Very acidy.
Yeah, very, very soft. And there wasn't a lot you could do to get soft water except putting through various salts to do that, the chemicals at the time. But I did aspire to a 6-foot long tropical tank, which was in my room at home, and I really kept that till about 19. I left home at about 21, and I got married at 22, and I didn't keep fish for some time.
Right.
And then I decided to start keeping marines at 28. So there was quite a gap between the tropicals and the marines.
Right.
So the first thing I did was I decided to have 2 boxer shrimps in a tank. The boxer shrimps were available in those days, and you put white coral skeletons in the water.
Right.
And the shop told me that these must be kept clean, absolutely clean, and should be taken out and scrubbed till they went back to white, or bleached them.
Oh, yes, I remember the bleaching situation.
Yeah, and you, if you didn't do that, they wouldn't survive. When you look back on that crazy suggestion, it was, I suppose, the retailer when they didn't survive, because they weren't kept in anything like the conditions they need to be kept in. The retailer wouldn't be found guilty. You'd be found guilty for not maintaining the coral skeleton. So,
oh my goodness,
that's very much about the trade at the beginning of the story of keeping. However, we went on to have other tanks until I moved into a flat I bought where I put a very largest tank in for its time, and my method of keeping it, because there were no test kits for checking the water, checking the calcium, magnesium, we had none of that knowledge.
Right.
So I used to mix up the salt, and I had reservoirs in what were very near the tank, but were really cupboards, and we used to top them up and fill them up, mix the salt water, put a heater in for a couple of days, it was permanently in there, and then start to drip it in very, very slowly and overflow the tank through an overflow hole, and used to put it down the drain, the water. Oh. So it was a continuous changing of salt water, but because that added the calcium, magnesium, it added everything basically.
Right, the trace elements.
Because it was all in the salt you bought, or you thought it was.
Right.
Some of it probably was missing in those days, but at least you could get a very flourishing tank. And I've got a book in the other room which shows a picture of it on the back of the tank, which is very respectable. Lots of soft corals, caloepus. The tanks at those years have developed so that you could keep many soft corals. And that was my hobby, and stayed my hobby till this day. I started D&D at the age of 60, 20 years ago.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so D&D is now 20 years old, basically.
Yes, 20 years since we first started D&D.
Right. So
21.
by the time you decided to start D&D, the progression to the reef hobby had improved, yes?
Well, enormously, because people like Julian Sprung, Delbeck, and others had written books. Actually, and Julian's book was the most enlightening of all. For me, his book was a revelation. And if you read it today, so many good comments in it about the way you should keep your reef.
There's still a lot of information in those books that are relevant to today.
Absolutely.
And that's why I consider the Alf Nielsen books.
Exactly the same.
And right. Nielsen, Fossa, Julian, and Delbeck.
Yeah.
Those are the reefing Bibles.
Correct.
And I firmly believe in them, yes.
And I met them all and gained a lot of knowledge from them, because they helped a lot. And had our different methods. Some of them were good, some of them were bad. I was very early at using a calcium reactor, and I think it was certainly one of them who said that would be a nightmare because it would put too much CO2 in the water,
Right.
and there'll be algae everywhere. I mean, it was just after that time that we used to use phosphate remover at that time, aluminium. Problem with used an aluminium phosphate remover is that all the soft corals shrunk.
Yes.
They don't like it.
They don't like it. Absolutely.
And today we know that aluminium removers put aluminium into the water as well. I happen to be friendly with a retailer in Germany called Jan Olsen, who was part of that group of people I got to know. And I travelled to Germany often because I had a business selling German kitchens where we were a distributor. And that took me to Germany every 3 or 4 weeks. And I knew quite a few of the shops, and they were certainly more advanced than the English shops at that time. I wouldn't say so today. I think English shops may be as advanced, if not more advanced, than the good ones, than the German ones. But what is interesting about the discovery was that I was given some phosphate remover that was used by the water treatment companies for removing arsenic.
Arsenic, okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But arsenic and phosphate share the same chemical. I'm not a chemist, so I can't tell you all the scientists. But they both get absorbed in the removal of arsenic.
Okay.
They're very similar in character, and the material absorbs both of them. The removal of phosphate was an absolute breakthrough because algae, and every magazine you picked up on reef keeping or fish keeping, and the story was the same. How do I get rid of my cyanobacteria? How do I get rid of my algae? How do we do this? And there were loads of remedies. Very few worked. And I suddenly found this product, and I was the third person to use it that I'd been recommended. And I put it on, and I cannot tell you what it did. It killed 90% of the algae, but it didn't really kill them, it starved them of the nutrients that they wanted. Mm-hmm. So they didn't kill anything itself, it just changed the water conditions, so they weren't fed.
Right.
And that was a breakthrough of proportions that are still relevant today. That same product is sold today with the distributors worldwide. Raufoss is exactly the same product, still used since that period. And if you ask me when that period was, I would say that period was 87, 89, somewhere around there, when the first SPS started to appear from Germany. The very first ones were starting to be grown, and a calcium test kit had been invented by Salafert.
Yes.
That calcium test kit was really something completely new, which went on to do magnesium later on, and from there many other tests,
right. pH, alkalinity,
you name it, until today, where we have IPCs that give us 70 or 72 elements, which we can monitor in seconds on our tank. Yeah. And you can run your tank by them, and there's equipment now that is, I mean, the movement forward in my lifetime is like going from a horse to a modern racing car. The change has been so great.
Dramatic, right? And and when you look at it, it's such a short period of time that these things happened. I mean, you say 20 years, but 20 years is nothing in the scope of 100 years.
Well, I'll tell you, human beings, I've only been here a very short while on this planet as well, in the same. And I think 20, we talked about 50 years, it's half a lifetime if you're lucky enough to ever live to 100. I think most people don't. And at the moment that is. because there's massive discoveries all the time. Then we get more and more discoveries.
And you look at like the advancement. Not long ago, the Wright brothers created flight, where we've been to the moon and back.
Actually, it's more interesting because Leonardo da Vinci,
yes,
he drew something that would fly, but they never tried it out that we know of.
Right.
So the Wright brothers came to be and in fact, my mother's father was a hairdresser, or a hair barber, as you called them in those days, and cut the Wright brothers' hair.
Oh.
So, I know, that's part of history of family going back. So, but I was going to go and live abroad. I decided that I was going to retire at around 60, 50, 58, something like that. Because I'd been one of the lucky people. I've never done a day's work in my life because everything I do, I've enjoyed. So, the job I had, my companies that I were involved in, to me, to be able to have that ability to work in what you like and do what you like is unique to very few people.
And it is. David, I could sympathize with that because for a long time I was an accountant. And while I was very successful, I made a lot of money, I did very well, my family, we all lived well. I wasn't happy. And coming to do what, like, for example, what you're doing, your passion became your job. It wasn't a job. It was your passion.
Yeah.
And your passion helped you progress.
And I had a similar passion when working because I enjoyed so much the design and elements of kitchens, and I was involved in design in a big European company. We worked as a team together. So I've always been lucky. I've employed myself. I wasn't employed.
Right.
No one would have me. And at school, I couldn't read till I was 11. So I was very dyslexic. So I had a great problem. I thought I'd never earn a living. So there are, my history was not a good one at education. I failed completely being at school. But it hasn't made one jot of difference to my ability to earn a living, which is quite incredible, really. So there's something wrong with the education system that doesn't recognise the different talents that you need, that people have who you think are not academic. They can still have a fantastic lifestyle and life career.
You're a great example of a kid who could barely read at 11, and today you're a success. Everybody admires all the work that you've done. I'm sure in the kitchen industry, the cabinets and everything, you're admired there. But the way you are admired for this is amazing. And all the things that you brought to the industry. You're a man who has actually worked your best to produce something to make a change. Roa Foss was monumental. It changed the industry. You think about it, it changed the industry.
It did at that particular time. We also, I also got involved in the T5 development.
Aha! We had a slight conversation last night about this, and I'm glad you brought it up today. Elaborate.
Well, I went to Germany very often, and there was a person called Bernie Moore who had a really, really good tank with corals growing, and SBSs as well, very early on. And he tried out, and I saw them, a T5 tube, which had only just come out by Philips at the time.
Yes.
And they made it in white, and they made it in blue.
The Actinic 03.
Yes, the actinic O3.
Yes.
They made that T5 tube in that, and they weren't designed for the aquarium industry. They were designed for offices.
Oh, interesting.
And the actinic, I think, was for copying, something to do with. Anyway, these two tubes were brought out, and Pritzel, who owned ATI at the time, he made a fitting for two tubes to be near each other, which you could put these strips of tubes one next to the other, blue, white, blue, white.
Oh, the double end caps.
Yes, with the double end caps.
Right.
Yeah. So he made that fitting, and I saw that fitting, and I went to see him, and I said I'd like to try that myself. And at this time, I was not involved in D&D, but I wanted to try them. And D&D, we just started, I think, at the time, and now we just started. I retired, came back, started D&D. And I worked with Deltec, because we did a distributor, and their skimmers their pinwheel was way in front of its time.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to bring in, and I bought one of those skimmers early on, and I sold it because I had a bigger tank, always trying to get a bigger tank. This is the big problem of this hobby. You want a bigger tank.
Yes.
Yeah, and the work that goes with it, you're not worried about that. You just want it bigger. So these T5 tubes were quite interesting because they were not the HQIs which we were using at this point.
Yeah,
BLV.
HQIs were very power consuming.
Yeah, very power consuming, also very hot, creating a lot of energy and heat, which had to be got rid of. So that the steps were that these T5 tubes would make a difference. And I went along to the manufacturer of these T5 tubes and agreed to mix the blue phosphorus with the daylight phosphorus, and it called a new tube called Aqua Blue.
Oh, so the Aqua Blue
that
was your design.
Yeah, and then Pritzel bought them for Germany, from me.
Okay.
And we shared them together. Yeah, and then other manufacturers who are very well known today had bought their tubes from me,
right,
putting their own name on them. And one of the interesting things that's always fascinated me to this day, as I said last night, I think, to you,
yes,
that people used to come up and say, I much prefer that manufacturer's tubes to yours. And it's much better, and it lasts longer, and everything about it was great, except the only problem was it's the same tube which I developed and has been sold by me to that supplier.
So all they did was rebranded.
We just put a different name on it.
I want everyone to learn a lesson here. At times, you see people give reviews and say, this is better than this, and this is better than that. And most of the time, it's the same product. And here's an example of these T5 bulbs being compared by these light experts as this tube is better than this tube. And meanwhile, they're manufactured in the same place, manufactured with the same percentage of chemistry. They're the same exact bulbs. Meanwhile, this guy was touting, oh no, well, this bulb was better than yours. Right? Meanwhile, they were the same bulbs. How did that feel to you?
I chuckled inside, yeah.
One of the advantages you have over most is that you can test. Everyone here sees this big, beautiful, gorgeous monster behind us. However, he has a filtration room in the back, and you'll see some clips of it within the video. What's interesting is that if he needs to test a small pump, there's gadgets back there in your filtration room that give you the space to work on it appropriately, right? Because a small pump is not going to do anything for this.
No.
But what you have in the back room can actually work with it.
Check all the pumps, all the things.
Right.
And it's not just say, oh, it's okay. It takes, we run something for 9 months, a year, and several of them, because we want to know what if there's a failure built behind them.
Right.
We know that many of the things you hear of, they're a failure, and it's got to be put right, and it needs to be put right instantly. People, the failure could cause enormous distress in a tank if some piece of equipment goes. I love diving, and I went diving many times, and we used to do night diving. If you take a torch when you night dive, you cannot believe the colours that you see, because everything around you is black, and the only light that's available is the light from the torch. The torch,
which is about 6K.
6K.
Right.
Yeah, between 4 and 6K.
Right.
Yeah, and that everything's a different colour to what you've seen before.
And this is why underwater photography is so well made for our eyes, because the cameras basically are shooting at 6K. The flashes are shooting at 6K. So when you take a picture of something that looks blue, and you take the picture of it, and the camera's flash is red.
Yeah, it's our colours that we see everywhere all the time, and that led me to believe that blue is the right way to go. I'm not a scientist. It just instinctively said, "This is blue. We need to have more blue."
Mm-hmm.
It's the same with water movement. Now, water movement is absolutely imperative to a reef tank.
Very much.
And without
flow
it,
is so important.
Without it, animals, many of the corals will die.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know what's an example of that? Here's an example. You can shut your lights off for 5 days, and all your animals will be fine. You shut your flow off for an hour and see what starts to happen.
Yeah, all chemistry changes. It just deteriorates. And flow was something that I saw down when I was diving, and it struck me that we had nothing like enough flow in our tank. So I was always putting pumps in the tank at that time. I went on to closed loop systems later on,
right,
because first of all, drilling holes through the bottom, which is the most stupid thing anybody can do.
It's the biggest mistake.
So I learned that the hard way. I didn't have any accidents, but the hard way.
But you were lucky.
Well, yes, not lucky. Took action soon enough when I saw it didn't work by plugging them. Yeah.
Okay.
And going for closed loops. Yeah.
Right. And I love your closed loop system. By the way, in volume 2 of the book, you can see his closed loop system. But you know what? I'll shoot it into this video, and I'll put the picture of his closed loop. There's a lot of PVC piping.
Yeah. And to make sure there's not too much gravel, because I don't like too much gravel, I use all the waste glass from Reggie's factory, who manufactures tanks for us. I use the glass strips that he's got cutting off the edges, and I put them between the pipes. So they actually come up to the height of the pipes, so the pipes end up in channels.
Oh, okay.
And then I put the gravel on.
Right.
So I don't have deep, because the pipe is 25 mil.
Right.
Yeah, through the bottom. Mm-hmm. And you need something 25 mil of gravel before you even start to, and you've got to have it. So, yes, before you hide it.
What got you here?
I'll tell you how I got here. Every desire of mine was one day to have a fish tank that was a wall.
A wall.
Big, just like you see in the zoos, a really big wall.
Right.
Yeah. And so my aim was that, as I had the smaller, what you might call a big fish tank in those days, 6 foot, 2 meters by a meter, but no, 800 wide centimeters,
right.
75, 76.
800 centis.
What?
800 centis by...
Yeah, and 60 high, 60 high.
Okay.
I had started with smaller tanks, and each time I changed my tank, I changed it to a bigger one. And I had a tank here, which is the pond in my house now, which was the sump. Yes.
Oh, okay, the one we step over.
Yeah.
Yes.
8 tonsy skimmers in there.
8 tonsy skimmers.
8 tonsy skimmers on rails.
Oh my God!
And there was a tank in that area there, and I just I got married, my second marriage. Then about I don't know 2 years after I bought this flat, when I was going to buy a flat in Monte Carlo, I decided against it. Came back. I had this beard and tear, and I wanted to keep this so I could come back to England and stay for a bit and go back again. And it was fortuitous I bought this because I had a big flat upstairs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, where I had reasonable sized 2 fish tanks in them. The flat upstairs was a very much larger flat, and I sold it. And I bought this one. Unfortunately, the man who lived here, he shot himself one night.
Oh my God!
And it was just before I was leaving, and I stepped in, said I'd be very happy to buy this flat straight away from the probate people. So I bought it because I know the garden, I know everything, and it was perfect size if I came back, 2-bedroom flat. So I got married again, and my wife said she'd like a bigger flat. It's time because her children were living from our first marriage were living with us. We're bringing them up. There were 3 of them, and I said, okay, we'll go. I'll do a deal. I want a big fish tank. You want a bigger flat. I'll have a bigger flat if you let me have a bigger fish tank.
See, this is called the spouse factor, which I discuss in volume 1. Right? You make compromises for what you're going to keep.
Yeah. Well, it's not really a compromise. It was my wife didn't really realise what she was letting herself into on the bigger tank, because what happened is I designed the tank. I built a mock one, not here, but at the office where we were at the time. I built in chipboard a big version of it. Did the rocks, numbered them all, glued them as well, because that's another product that I had a very great success. So I'll talk to you about that in a minute. Put in before the dividing wall of the second flat we bought that I agreed to buy was opened up.
Oh.
So the wall is this one here, Tony.
Right.
Yeah? So it ran right through the flats. So this tank, when my wife first saw it, was part of one room, which went from there to there. And she saw this tank being built in here, and she couldn't visualise the scope of going across the pond and the next flat and the door through here. She couldn't visualise that at all.
Right.
Yes. And she saw this, and she nearly went berserk.
She lost it.
Yeah. She wanted to know how it was possible to have such a huge fish tank. Yeah.
Right.
In this flat that was only half the flat that she was going to have. Yeah. Because she hadn't vision to see how big it would be. What happened next was that once we opened up the walls, everything was forgiven. However, when we filled up the tank, 8 weeks later, bang.
No. Yeah. Really?
Bang.
See, I didn't know that.
This pane, the big pane, broke in half, snapped, and it's not this tank. Water right to the kitchen. You went and got something in just now with my feet in water.
Oh my goodness!
£49,000 worth of damage.
Oh my God!
This flat, because this flat was okay in good condition apart from this one thing here, and the other flat, yes, was not wrecked at all because the water went out. this flat here is lower, but the wall hadn't come down, so no water got there into the flat.
Oh, okay, I see.
At that point, it's just between opening it up and... So anyway, that was put right. The reason that tank went bust is he didn't have enough stress bars.
Oh.
Nothing to do with me. I didn't design it.
Right.
But the manufacturer, who I knew very well, had not put enough stress bars, because I said I want the minimum stress bars going across. Do you follow me? Because there's an L shape. And I don't like stress bars because they block light. They used to be about this wide. I said I want the minimum. So he tried to please me by putting the minimum. But the silicon gave way on the stress bar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, it is a massive pane of glass.
Yes.
For sure.
So it's the same height as this one. So it went bang. Yeah. Anyway, it was replaced. He put a new front on and redid it. And he put more stress bars on. And that tank lasted me 12 or 14 years. And then from that period, I took it out because the silicons were beginning to show wear and tear. And this one I constructed in a completely different manner. This is all toughened glass, and it's a different construction, and completely different. And all the things I learnt about that one that was wrong, well, this one were perfect. So.
Well, by the way, I want everyone to realize when he says tougher glass, what he means is that it was tempered.
Tempered.
What we call in the States
hardened, some people call it.
Right. And they do it through a heating process.
Yeah, and it adds strength to the pane.
Right.
But the problem with it is if it breaks, it goes into little pieces.
Little tiny pieces,
yeah.
Right,
like
exactly. Just like windshields.
Yeah, just like a windshield.
Now, is this double laminated?
Yes.
Okay, so it's
double laminated.
Double laminated.
And one lamination will hold.
Right.
So if you did crack it, one lamination will hold.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Only one of the glass will crack.
Yeah, it will crack and phase everywhere.
Right, and then the other one will...
The other one will hold it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not structurally sound
to
have one pane.
Right, exactly.
Because if that cracks, you're in a mess. But with this, if one pane cracked either side, as long as the other one held, and it will,
right.
It won't do what the other one did.
You can make corrections with it.
Yeah, and you can empty it out at your own leisure and pull everything up. It's possible to But
so the original tank that was here was replaced, and this is the newer model. Okay.
And of course, we made it and improved everything on it. Yeah. And one of the things about toughened glass, we call it, you call it tempered. The one thing about this toughened glass is 10 times stronger,
right,
than the standard glass, that you can buy. And the silicon is special silicon as well for the.
Yeah, we were having a long conversation about that yesterday.
Yeah,
with silicone and where it's being manufactured and some of the deception behind it.
Yeah.
At the same time, there's great silicone out there. There really is.
No,
it's just they have to use it.
Yeah. Well, the type of silicone we used on this tank was an epoxy type of because it's an epoxy that you mix the two together, and then they harden. That hardens, and it will harden within 2 hours, so you can fill the tank.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and it's designed for hurricane, like holding glass in a hurricane.
Okay.
So it's very, very strong.
Right.
But a specialist company came and did the silicone, bought the glass. But you can't. The disadvantage with a toughened tank is there is no way that you can drill a hole in it or change the size. You cannot touch it once it's
done, it's done.
Once you cut it and toughened it, that sheet has to be the same. You can't make a hole in it. You can't do anything to it.
Exactly. Any tempered glass that you try to cut will shatter.
So you must design it properly, exactly correctly.
Right.
Otherwise, you must have all the things in that you need to have. You can't add it or change it afterwards.
Right.
It's over.
You built the tank.
Now I got to the biggest. Now, if you'd asked me would I do another one, the reason clearly is no. I can't, because it would take too long. And I'd be lucky that I should see that end of it. And the second reason is that would take a whole room out of my flat. Which and redecorating the whole flat where I'm in now, because I'd have to take the room onto this room and put it in there and put a wall down. But it's not going to happen.
Well, I honestly think that this tank is appropriate for where it is and how it looks. And to do something, can you do something bigger? Yes. However, this is impressive as it is.
Yeah, but floor to ceiling would be nice. If I was going to do another tank, if I was, I'd make it floor to ceiling this month.
So something like Andrew Sandler.
Yes, because I know enough about what the problems are to handle floor to ceiling, to glue the corals in, make sure they grow properly, not have issues with things that I know now how to handle. Planaria, Aptasias, all those things we got through. I mean, there's so many of them.
Right.
I've seen in my time. I used to have some squirrelfish put in my tank, which were very small.
Right, but eventually they got big.
But eventually they were eating antheas.
Of course.
And I couldn't
They got huge mouths.
I couldn't catch them. They lived under the corner of the cave.
Right, that's how they...
And they wouldn't, even when they came out to feed, they dashed under there, right up, got the food, straight back under the cave. They live under the cave. They don't seem to want to come out in the daylight swimming around.
No.
And I had to close the tank down to get them out. A friend of mine, I think, as well as I know him still to this day, he suggested that I put these innocent-looking squirrelfish in, small. He said, they'll live in the cave, it's nice. Yeah. Get to this size.
And they're predators.
They're absolutely lethal. So I've been through.
But were yours like a brilliant red color?
Yeah, they're striped.
Yeah. They're beautiful.
They look nice. They look their eyes are a bit out of proportion.
Yeah.
Because they used to be
big
dark.
eyes.
Yeah, that's why. However, yeah, that is about the only real problem I've ever had, because I can get any fish out of here today. Because I have a trap, you haven't seen it, which I've designed, which has mirrors that you can put down the side and slide in. And you've got the whole front opens round, lifts up. So there's no trap. It doesn't look like a trap. They see the mirror in the inside. They just swim into what they think is the box. Half the box comes down. You're closing them. So there's very few fish that I can't catch now. I haven't got that problem.
Well, I'll tell you, everybody looks like they're living in harmony. You've got fish together that typically most people cannot keep together, and they're doing very well. It's a beautiful tank. Yeah. And things have, I was here, like 6-8 months ago? Something like that?
Yeah, maybe. I think it's a bit more, but that's
and the difference between then and now are dramatic.
Yeah.
Are dramatic. I told you, you have to put a jackhammer to frag some of these corals in there. It's mind-blowing. So, because of that, you've changed your way of taking care of the tank with Zlements.
Yes.
Explain to us a little bit about that.
Low pH in the tank, which was causing me issues, which I was really, really disturbed by. And it seemed to be worse than it ever used to be. And I don't know why, but it was. And the pH was not climbing above 8.
Okay.
So I went round and I was doing the tests from another company weekly, and, well, not weekly, let's say 2 weekly, the ICP tests. And the service was driving me nuts, Because one week the ICP machine wasn't running, or it was too hot, too cold, it had to be sent somewhere else to a port first before it was released, and they may be having breakfast instead of having. They weren't on our time. It was a real mess. So I decided to look for somebody else, and in that process came across the beginning of Zlements, and that company offered me an ICP test and said you should try and go on to dosing, and it's very much more competitive, because I said it was I couldn't. You'd have the cost of running on chemicals would be miles too much.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it wasn't, because I went to cost it, and I got a shock, because chemicals are much lower price now than they were, and not only that, the system for raising the pH had been just bought out, and people were trying it, and you could get the tank going up from where there was a low pH, you could get it going to 8.4, 8.5. And then in that experience, I was told you could mix it if it went up as high as that, though I didn't have it go up as high as that, because I found that at 8.4, Rafos was doing what it did with hydroxide and jamming.
Right, and it's bonding.
Yeah. So I wanted to set it at a height. And in that process, I found you could mix complete and pH plus in my questioning. And in that, I was told yes. And then it came to my mind that, well, perhaps you could control the pH now. You could set it at what you want.
Right.
And that's how the idea came about to add it to the cage manager.
Right. So now D&D has a KH manager.
Yeah, that was part
that
of
is specifically programmed for the D&D products.
Well, for KH Manager was specifically designed for monitoring your KH.
Right.
Not the pH, just the KH.
Right.
It monitored the pH, but it didn't have any. There was no one making a second dosing formula which you could add. You've got a two-part system, which I think you know what is.
Sure.
You've got calcium, magnesium on one side.
Exactly.
And other elements on the other side. They can't mix together.
Right.
They won't work together. You have to dose them separately or keep them away from each other, because they can go out of solution if they hit each other too.
Right.
And the pH plus is one product, and there's a complete, which is one product. They're both part two of a part two system. Yeah.
Of a two-part system.
Of a two-part system.
Yes.
They're both there, right. And when the pH goes up too high, you can mix it with complete. So you have a less strong, but it's not strong to take the pH so high. And I thought to myself, well, I'll try that. And I did get some stability. Around complete about 75% of the mix and 25 pH plus. And I'd end up at somewhere around 2, but it was hit and miss.
8.2.
8.2.
Right.
But it was hit and miss. In other words, well, it's hit and miss in the sense that you put the mix in, and when you took out the calcium reactor, for example, which I took away because I didn't need a calcium reactor anymore, there was less CO2 going in the water, so it would rise higher, and you couldn't alter it. You can't. You need. During the day, it might hit the point you want to, and then it would go back, and you need pH. You can't do that by hand.
Right.
It doesn't.
Right. So you need something that can do it automatically.
Something to do it automatically. It says, "Hey, pH is set 8.2." Yeah.
Right.
It's set at 8.2. Right. Reached 8.2. It says, "Hey, no more pH plus. We'll put in the other one, the
right,
complete,
the complete, which is the trace elements.
Yeah, well, they're both the same. They're identical. But complete,
but one will not affect the pH.
Yeah, but the other one has a stabilizing buffer in that does not affect the pH.
Right.
The other one has is a buffer, but also raises pH doing it.
Exactly.
Right. So you can get to a point with a machine where you say no more of that. Start dosing that. And when it drops again, it will say, right, now we've got to get the pH back up again.
Right.
and it does it automatically from that machine.
Wow.
Yeah. So we got a software to do it, and these machines.
And that's what separates yours from everything else.
No one else has got that.
Right. Exactly.
There is on the computer, on one of the computers, they have a program that can do something like it, but it's not a KH manager, and it's very complicated, I'm told by people. But we've got that now, and all the people who bought KH managers from us, we developed our own program as well, which is different from the standard one.
Right, exactly.
The one that you see in America. All the people who bought that have now got a software, or will be getting a software. There are people running it who we've asked if they'd like to run it now, right. And we've got quite a few of them now running it. We've got another one starting on Monday now running it, and no one's had a problem with it at all so far. Because before you rush and do something, and I think the app for doing that, the software app it's about 2 weeks away. Because we've also adding more pumps to join the system, because you can join dosing pumps, more of them now,
right,
to the system,
right,
to dump it, to do all the chemicals. So you've got a complete dosing point to go to do all this.
Right.
Yeah. So that idea came to me by just using my tank as a problem with the pH.
Right. So you had an issue with the pH, and your KH device,
yes,
you modified it,
yes,
so that way now it can control it for you, and it's one less thing to worry about.
Yes, and it controls it as well as the cage.
Right.
The cage is a different one. Cage is a buffer
that
you use. Now, the reason we have a separate buffer, because I dose both of them, all the time, but they've got the traces in as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the cage buffer, has no traces in it. It's just pure cage buffer.
Right.
I dose that because I don't want to dose my traces higher or anything. It's all in balance.
It's all in balance.
Yeah. So, and we make them up as well. It's all in balance.
So you programmed it into the software where you can say, this is where I want my pH to stay. This is where I want my alkalinity to stay.
Yeah.
You go do your job and keep it stable.
Yes. And
one less thing to worry about.
When it goes down the cage, it won't put any more because it's got sulfur. It's got all the other ingredients of what they are. I can go to my phone and give them to you, but in the 2-part mix.
Right.
And you don't want to suddenly dose more of that. You want to get that correct.
Right.
Yes.
And now when you send your results or your water samples to Zlements, they in turn give you your ICP and give you notification as to how well things are running.
Yes, they do a report. I look at it myself and know how well it's running by looking at the results. Yeah, but they do a results thing, and they tell you which chemicals to mix. Also, on the minor traces, they tell you on the bottle now. You have a bottle of, say, iodine, a bottle of magnesium, a bottle of calcium. Yeah, all these bottles, some of them will mix with each other.
And some don't.
And some don't. So the bottle has A, B, or C. And it's not A, B, or C, because I think it's A, and I think it's C, and it's X or something on the other bottle. A means that all A's, when it's on the bottle, can be mixed with A's.
Aha.
So you could...
Yes, I see.
Yeah, all B's can be mixed with B's.
Right.
So you can build your traces up. You can't mix them up. You've got to keep them separate.
Right.
Trace.
So this trace element is B status or A status, which means it can mix with A or it can mix with B. Whichever
A's
status.
have got to mix with A's.
Right, and B's are going to mix with
But
B's.
there's a third status called C, and that means it can be mixed with either.
Aha!
And that's on the bottle. Yes.
Okay.
That you'll see that on the bottle now.
Right.
Yeah. That means that instead of dosing each one separately, when you've learned your thing on the ICP, you can say, right, I'm constantly, because I've got a nitrate reactor, I'm using more sulfur.
Sulfur, yes.
And I'm using more molybdenum. So when I make my mix up, I can add all the things. Let's call them A's. Yeah,
Right.
I can mix all the A things, which may include sulfur and molybdenum. It may
Together.
not. But I can make a mix together that doses, say, 20 mil a day, 30 mil a day, whatever I've got a dose.
Right.
Yeah? And I tailored it to my requirements because of my nitrate reactor on my tank.
That's clever.
Yeah. And I only need 2 pumps to do it all.
Right. Yeah, because it's A and B.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you follow me now?
Oh, absolutely.
So this.
Well, remember,
Yeah.
I cheated. Yesterday we were here, we were going over all of that stuff, so I can visualize everything now easier
Now,
than before.
No one else has done that up to now.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been 8 months, I think, since my last visit here, and I know he was progressing strongly with Zlements and their product line and the ICP testing. And the growth of the animals here are monumental. It's amazing the size of all his corals. They're just grown out of control. But you're seeing this in the video, and you realize some of these fish, they may look small, but a lot of fish
Chunky.
are this big, and they may look small to you, but they're huge. The corals are huge. I mean, that Gonapora there is as big as your head. And this is all from a result of just in 8 months, I've noticed a dramatic change in this tank.
Yeah.
And you're doing a great job with it.
Yes.
And you know what amazes me is we've known each other quite some time.
Yep.
You keep innovating. You keep coming up with new stuff. That's why you can't just, give up anytime soon. You got to keep striving along. So that way, when we do this interview in your 90s, you've come up with more stuff since then.
Yeah.
Because you're an inspiration to this hobby. A lot of people appreciate what you've done. A lot of people around the world know who David Saxby is and what you've done and contributed to the industry in a whole, and we admire you for that. And this tank is living proof of how knowledgeable you are in this thing here. And we all appreciate you for this.
Well, all the knowledge I've gained and had the use of has come from other people and their help. Zlements I came across at its infancy because I had been using, whatever you call it, other people to do some of the work. And I watched this development with ICPs, and I'm really for that. And the one thing I said to Josie before we started, there were several things, but one thing is speed of test results are imperative.
True. Very true.
You have to, before we work together, you have to tell me we can send a report out within 24 hours of receiving the water sample back by computer so people know. And if people get it during the second day, in other words, they post on a Monday and it arrives with you on Tuesday, you're very likely, if it arrives in the morning, to get it back by Tuesday evening.
Right.
And they've done that.
So their turnaround time is quick.
Guaranteed 24 hours when they've received it.
Oh, yesterday you had the opportunity of meeting Dan.
Yes.
And I visited Dan yesterday, and his tank is truly a work of art. He has a gorgeous reef tank, but he thanks a lot to Zlements because he uses their products. He knows how to use the products. He has your products there, and he just kept raving about it and how he really enjoyed it. And the turnaround time, he was very happy with that.
Yeah.
He gets his results quickly. So he's an example of a product that works and that is doing great. David is one of the ones that are the catalyst to building that product up and helping it out. David, I really have to say, I really appreciate everything you've done for us. Now, before we part, is there anything you would like to tell the audience or any advice that you would like to give them? It's your platform.
Well, it's lovely to see you again.
Thank you.
And your enthusiasm. And you also have put a lot of energy into that, because we've known each other a long time, and you're still a fanatical hobbyist and chasing the next rainbow.
Right,
so,
absolutely.
So there you are. So, no, I think we both should take a break now and look forward to the next meeting.
Wonderful. Well, from me here in England, I'm having a great time. Tomorrow we're doing the conference.
Yes.
It's going to be amazing. Stay tuned, because I'm actually doing a vlog on that one. From the moment I got in the car to go to the airport, I've been recording all the transactions. So you will get a chance to see everything that has transpired and the great luck I had on the airplane. This was really the cream on the top. But from here, from VargasReef Chronicles, once again, thank you so much, and stay tuned to my next episode right here.
You have to love reefing